sunshine, but it's heaven complete, where every heart just comes together. There's a smile for every kind of weather. Oh, I don't care for riches, 'cause they don't mean a thing. With love all around me, I'm as proud as a king. For bless your heart, I've got the world at my feet, in a little back alley, down a little back street.
Hello everybody, today we are in Hurst Street in town to explore Birmingham last surviving back-to-back houses, called 15. These houses were occupied from about 1821 until 2001, after which the court fell into dereliction. Back-to-back housing characterized the expansion of industrialized Birmingham and other large British cities during the Victorian era. The first known mention of purposely designed back-to-back houses was in Bermondsey in 1706. They were first being built in Birmingham in the 1770s. In the 18th and 19th centuries, mill, mine, and factory owners built mile upon mile of them to pack like sardines the maximum of workers into the minimum space at the lowest possible cost. There were thousands like them in Birmingham, home to generations of working-class Brummies. To access the courtyard of Court 15, you need to go through a tunnel from Inge Street. It's a narrow and dark alley which can be daunting if you are claustrophobic. Now imagine walking through the tunnel without electricity, which was standard procedure in the 19th century. The tunnel didn't have a grille, so anyone could come into the courtyard and have access to the facilities, which led to a lot of vandalism. And it is sad since the back-to-backers didn't have much to begin with. The houses at Court 15 are called back-to-backs because they were built on either side of a spine wall running down the terrace. They were literally built back-to-back, one room deep, so the houses had no rear windows or doors and no backyard. Each row had 6 to 8 houses. The typical back-to-back house has 3 rooms, one above the other. Exceptionally, there was a bit of a front garden to each back-to-back in a yard. In the courtyard were communal facilities. A wash house or brew house to do the weekly laundry. It had a copper, also known as a boiler, set in brick and under which a fire could be lit once it had been filled with water. Dirty clothes were then put in to be boiled up and cleaned before they were maided, swilled, and mangled. If you are a millennial like myself and have no clue what I am talking about, here is the demonstration.
That's good for your muscles, you know.
Hello, Mrs. Hadley.
What do you do?
Why don't you use a washing machine like everybody else?
Well, I'd rather use the old maid, as I'm always used to it, and...
What do you call it? What did you call it?
Maid.
The old maid. That's
Yes.
that's the dolly
Yes,
stick,
that's
is
the
it?
dolly stick.
Is it good for your muscles?
Yes, it does you good now and again if you have a good maid. Makes you feel a bit better.
Isn't it a bit tiring, though?
No, I don't think so. I mean, when you've got anything very dirty and you've got to get it in the tub, you'll get your maid out and it's clean.
Don't you think it wears the clothes out more quickly, though?
No, I don't think so. It's just the same as an ordinary washer. I mean, if you take them to the washers, I mean, I don't think it's...
You know
it gets so much clean as what it does when you're maid. Because you've got your work and you know it's got to be done and it's through the mangle and out on the line, and it's...
Let me see you put them through
do
the
it
mangle.
yourself. Yes, certainly. Now I've got to put my maid on there.
Oh, it fits on the side of the tub like that. That's handy,
yes,
isn't
that's
it?
how I put it on the
Yes.
tub.
How long does it take you to do your washing?
About an hour.
There she comes. It gets them quite dry, doesn't it? Do you think a mangle's as good for getting clothes dry as a spin dryer?
It gets them drier. I think it does anyway.
Here's this one, I'll just help it out.
Yes.
I suppose it just drops in the bath.
Yes,
doesn't it?
right in the back. Got a little bit of it.
Don't some of your perhaps younger acquaintances think it's a bit strange to carry on in this old-fashioned way?
Well, I do sometimes, because I take the washing this house next door, they take it up to the cleaners. But I'd rather do my own.
There is one advantage of the modern washing machine, Mrs. Hadley, and that's that it's supposed to keep the ladies' hands nice. Can I just have a look at yours? Well, your hands are quite nice, aren't they? Do you look after them when you're doing the washing like this?
No trouble. Just do me washing ordinary and take no notice. Although my hands have always been nice, you know, in a way.
But you don't wear rubber gloves, do you?
No rubber gloves. I'm too old-fashioned.
Now, it must get a bit lonely for you and cold when you're out here doing your washing. Do you ever sing to yourself?
Yes, I very often do.
Off you go then. Let's see you finish your washing.
There shall be showers of blessing. This is the promise of love. There shall be seasons refreshing, sent from the Saviour above.
The privies or dry toilets were shared amongst the residents.
The bucket, if it was full, you could leave it for somebody else, or you could take the bucket and you would mix it with the ash from the fires.
The bucket was emptied into another bucket and then collected by a soilman. The waste matter was dried out and made into fertilizer and then sold to farmers to use on their land. The privies were in close proximity of the nearest house, which made the smell unbearable. Sometimes it would rain and the bucket would overflow and seep into the mostly unpaved courtyard grounds. Or the toilet would be vandalized and made unusable.
This is a flush toilet. A wooden seat, warm to the touch. Paper for toilet paper. Every Sunday, my job was, Sunday afternoon was squares for next week. Yeah?
Yeah.
Very upmarket, it's threaded on a piece of string, and I think it's the Guardian, I'm not sure.
The miskins were located in a corner of the courtyard. Originally, a miskin was a pit in the back court where the daily rubbish from the houses was dumped. Later on, the rubbish was put in dustbins. They were then emptied by a dustman, and it smelled horrendous. The courtyard also provided a water pump that the residents had to share among themselves. The clean water came from the Elan Valley. By the late 1930s, most houses had a cold water tap. Back-to-back housing became renowned for squalor, disease, and poverty due to its cramped design, open sewers, and poor sanitation and ventilation. Despite living in such a hostile environment, detrimental to their health, backstreet Brummies did everything they could to look respectable and have clean and neat surroundings. By 1821, house number 1 had been converted from a single dwelling into a pair of back-to-backs. It was the first house to be constructed and is the tallest and the largest in Court 15. Houses number 2 and 3 were built in about 1830. The terrace along Hurst Street was constructed in 1831. The residents would pay 3 pennies a week in rent. Some were so poor that they would do moonlight flits, which means they would flee the house during the night to avoid paying rent. In total, over 500 families had lived in Court 15 from the early 1800s until 1977. Each of the 4 houses is decorated and furnished to illustrate a different era. The 1850s, the 1870s, the 1930s, and the 1970s. House number 1 was occupied by the Levi family who lived there from 1851 and whose ancestors came from Eastern Europe.
It's a big house. Normally, a back-to-back house will finish there.
The particularity of this house is that it has a scullery, a separate room used as a kitchen, which is rare.
The scullery, pardon?
The others haven't got it.
No, but normally the scullery or working area for the kitchen, whatever you want to call it, sits with...
The room on the ground floor is multifunctional. It was used as a dining room, a living room, and a kitchen.
It's to keep things cool. Well, they have marble slabs and all sorts. Slate, marble.
We were in a Thursday's house, and it's now turned into a toilet. And that used to be, when we first moved in, outside there was a big marble slab in an outhouse.
Yeah.
And it used to be in there, but that was a scullery. We lived in London, we had a scullery in London as well.
Eggs are up in the air because of rats and mice.
Mr. Levi was a watchmaker and he used his children's bedroom as a workshop.
So this is what this man did for a living. He made hands for clocks and watches using something like this. They had, we're talking 1840s, there's no electric or battery operated drills. So he just put a drill bit in there, look, and then it's on strike. One of these days the string's going to break and we'll be in trouble then. We'll have to have an investigation as to why the strings broke. But there you go.
By 1861, the family had moved out of the court to get closer to the jewelry quarter. On a funny note, Eric, the tour guide, and the family I was with were hilarious. At some point we had a giggle when Eric said that when he was a baby, he used to sleep in a drawer chest. But one person thought that the parents would put the baby in the drawer and then shut it, leaving the baby trapped inside.
That's mental.
No, it isn't.
Don't shut it. Shut it. Shut it. Crying, just push it.
I was in a drawer on two chairs. I was in a drawer. I was 12 before I got out of that drawer. No, I'm not joking. No. They're taking the word gullible to the English dictionary.
I looked up the word ninja, it said can't be found.
Yes, that's where I spent my time.
The best part is all of that's on film, Liam.
Yeah.
Show people that.
You get a few
So,
bob for that.
when I started blarting, you know what blarting is?
No.
Oh, God, didn't you come from Sutton? Blarting. Have you not heard of blarting?
Like crying.
Crying. Blarting.
Yeah, bye.
God.
See you later.
House number 2 was home to Herbert Oldfield, his wife, their 10 children, and 2 lodgers, an unmarried couple. Herbert Oldfield was a glass worker, producing glass eyes for dolls, stuffed animals, and humans.
Real fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of that lights and what have you. So this is the normal size for a back-to-back house. 12 foot by 12 foot. Scullery is walk in, walk out. That's it. Fireplace now has an oven. The one next door didn't.
Yeah.
If you wanted to cook a joint for the house next door, you take it to the local baker. What's the step?
The unmarried couple shared the same room as Herbert's 4 sons. The largest bed and the children's bed were separated by a thin curtain, which could raise child abuse concern. At that time, there was no CRB check, and privacy was a foreign concept for whoever designed these houses. And when you have 10 mouths to feed, you probably feel like you don't have much choices anyways, and you would take a lodger in to supplement your income and hope it wouldn't turn out to be Jack the Ripper. Henry Mitchell, his wife, and 4 children lived in house number 3. 3 generations of the family saw the court from the 1830s, when it didn't even have its own water supply, through to 1935, when the houses had basic plumbing and electricity. The men of the family were locksmiths by trade. The house that now represents the story is dated to the 1930s. The family would have been struggling to survive because the 1930s was a period of high unemployment and recession.
That used to blow the fuse.
This box was the ancestor of the piggy bank. You save your coins in it, and when it is full, you take it to your bank, which would deposit the money into your bank account. George Saunders was the occupier of house number 4 in the late 1970s. George was born in St. Kitts in the West Indies and emigrated to Birmingham in 1958.
For a tailor in the city of Birmingham, and I decided to write an application for the job. And a letter came back to me saying that I am just the man that they're looking for. Please come for an interview. I got myself nicely dressed up with tie and everything like that. And I went in to see the man. The man looked at me and said to me, the vacancy is gone. I was dumbstruck. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And he said to me, I told you the job is gone. Get out. So I walked away. But after I found myself a job at a biscuit factory by the name of Jeffrey Hughes in Small Heath, one girl came up to me and asked me if my color under that white overall was the same as my arm and my face. And I said to her jokingly, no, it's green underneath. And she says, is it? And I says, of course it's green underneath. But as things went on, we began to improve, and finally I started to work on my own. And then we moved to Hurst Street, and from 1974 to 2001, we were very, very busy. We didn't advertise. Just one person tells the other, and it just built up like that. I have people coming for me to make suits for them from London. In the latter years, we made clothes for the Queen's Guards. We also had a very big order from Libya. If you're having something made for you, it looks entirely different from something that you buy out of the shop.
He set up his own successful business here at the Back-to-Backs, and between 1974 and 2001, he made clothes for Birmingham celebrities like Pat Roach, Libyan school children, and he received a prestigious order from the Queen's Guards. By 1896, all the houses fronting onto Hurst Street had become shops, and this was still the case until all the properties had been vacated by 2002. All the houses in the terrace now have late 20th century shop fronts. Back-to-back houses were the subject of controversy throughout the Victorian period, as they were considered to be among the worst type of housing. They were associated with overcrowded slum conditions, poor sanitary provision, and no through ventilation, which were thought to be the cause of disease. In 1840, the Select Committee on the Health of Towns, headed by the MP for Shrewsbury, Robert Slaney, called for them to be banned. But because the majority of MPs were slum landlords, it fell into deaf ears. The Birmingham Daily Gazette even reported that, I quote, thieves, loungers, peaky blinders, roughs, and vagabonds in general, most of them associating with prostitutes of the lowest type, perfect things as they used to be. For these people, the slums are happy hunting ground. They do not want cleanliness, fresh air, or anything else that make life healthy, decent, and orderly. They would make the council house a slum if it were surrendered to them. The very best landlord is wasted upon them. It would be easier to keep tidy dwellings for pigs than to make them appreciate improvements and respect owners' rights in the properties they inhabit. End quote. However, by 1875, Joseph Chamberlain, as mayor of Birmingham, turned his attention to the removal of slums from the city centre and the creation of a street modelled after the famous Parisian boulevards known as Corporation Street. The Artisans and Labourers' Dwellings Improvement Act was passed that same year to enable the demolition of areas of slum housing and overcrowded courts and make landlords improve the housing and hence improve the health and welfare of citizens. Could the backs-to-backs be improved though? This question was asked in 1971 by a housing and homelessness charity called Shelter to 3 mothers who lived in Vincent Crescent in Balfour Heath. Let's watch.
Vincent Crescent is dead. The houses should be buried without further ceremony or delay. There will be few mourners. That's the verdict of Shelter, the national campaign for the homeless, on these 33 terraced houses in Birmingham's Balsall Heath slum. The report criticises the outside lavatories, many of which it says were in an atrocious condition. Rubbish dumps in the yards were a source of disease and vermin, and the combination of dampness and poor wiring on the scale the investigators found was a great danger to health. The Shelter team, which included a health inspector, said that damp was present in every room they surveyed in all the houses. In this house alone, 4 children and 2 adults slept in one 12-foot square room. But Shelter says that if £30 a head were spent for each of the occupants of all but 2 of the houses, it would dispose of some of the most obvious health hazards. But do the residents think that £30 would be enough?
You must be kidding. 300, you mean?
How about you? How do you feel about living here? How long have you lived here?
We've lived here nearly 3 years now.
Are you hoping to be rehoused?
We are, but when we don't know.
And have you experienced any problems with damp and this sort of thing?
Oh yes, I've got 7 children in 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms, and me and my husband as well, because we can't use the other rooms.
Where would you like to live? What sort of house would you like to live in if you have the chance?
Well, I'd like a bathroom and a garden for the children.
Do you think these houses could be improved for £30 a head?
Oh no, no, it takes more than that. They're too far gone.
What sort of problems do you have to put up with?
Oh, everything. I've got rats, mice, beetles, damp. They're just not fit to live in.
How many children have you got here?
5.
Do you know yet whether you're going to be rehoused?
No, not for definite. We've heard a lot of rumours, right, you know, but we haven't heard for definite.
The Shelter report said that if they spent £30 per head on these houses, they would at least be habitable. Do you think that's fair?
Never.
You think they need more than £30?
They just aren't pulling down. They're disgusting, they are. The backs are disgusting. For children and us to have to live in.
Do you suffer any health problems with your children?
I do, well, yes. I mean, there's not 1 week goes by. One of them's got something. I've got one little boy that has bronchitis. He's also got impetigo. I mean, they pick all the germs up. It's just filth that's all around here that you can't expect anything else.
The building of back-to-backs was prohibited in Birmingham in 1876. However, at the turn of the 20th century, 200,000 people were still living in back-to-backs, almost half of the city's population. Back-to-back houses were condemned as unsanitary places for living in the 1930s, but they were still people's homes up until the 1960s. By that time, they were structurally unsafe as well as unsanitary. By the early 1970s, almost all of Birmingham's back-to-back houses had been demolished. The occupants were rehoused in new council flats, some in redeveloped inner-city areas, while the majority moved to new housing estates such as Castlevale and Chamberlain Wood. Despite being controversial and synonymous with poverty and insalubrity, back-to-back houses remain part of history. And for that reason, the National Trust teamed up with the Birmingham Conservation Trust to renovate and bring back to life Birmingham's last surviving back-to-backs here in Court 15. The restoration work cost £3 million.
The door we've come through, we don't know whether it was put in when it was built or much later, we don't know. But normally you would not gain access from a back house to a front house unless you got into the ceiling, above the ceiling.
In 1988, Court 15 received a Grade 2 listed status from the Department of National Heritage. This living history museum was opened to the public in 2004 and is run by the National Trust. Banned by building regulations formulated by housing reformers over 100 years ago and demolished by the thousands in the slum clearance schemes of the 1960s, the humble back-to-back is now seen by many architects and property developers as an interesting housing design for the needs of the intensely dense urban cities of the future while preserving the traditional street pattern. In Leeds, one of the few places where back-to-backs survive in any numbers, they are becoming popular. Now fitted with electric light, central heating and indoor bathrooms, the drawbacks have disappeared, revealing them as compact, easy-to-run homes with many of the advantages of flats but their en-suite doors. Back-to-back houses could be providing higher housing densities than tower blocks, but without the problems of isolation and social exclusion than tower blocks can create.
In a little back alley, down a little back street, there may be no sunshine, but it's heaven complete, where every heart just comes together. There's a smile for every kind of weather. Oh, I don't care for riches, 'cause they don't mean a thing. With love all around me, I'm as proud as a king. For bless your heart, I've got the world at my feet.